Hello and welcome to the D&D podcast. The following seminar was recorded at this year's GenCon featuring R.A. Salvatore.
All right, everyone. Welcome to 2010 GenCon's R.A. Salvatore panel. It's good to see you all here. I recognize a lot of faces, so it's good that you're back for more. Anyway, with no further ado, New York Times best-selling author of The Legend of Drizzt, R.A. Salvatore.
Thank you. I made her do that to put her on the spot. She's my new editor, Susan Morris. I'm going to drive her into the church. Is this thing even working?
What church is that?
Is this well, my second editor was. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. My second editor was Eric Severson for many years. He was a copy editor on my first book, then became my editor, and then he left to become a Unitarian minister.
Oh.
I broke him.
So you're good for the ministry.
You'll see Susan in a couple of years, and she'll be all gray and walking around like this. I promise. Okay, I want to talk about a lot of things today, but we have a lot of time, which is cool. Usually it's an hour, we get two, so we get lots of questions. So if you don't ask questions, we're going to play the trailer 50 times, and you can deal with it. Wizards of the Coast was gracious enough to allow me to bring the trailer for the game I'm working on over at 38 Studios. We're working on 2 games. And I'll start just letting you know what's going on in my world with that. About 4 years ago, almost exactly to the day 4 years ago, I got a call from Curt Schilling, the Boston pitcher. And I'm a huge Red Sox fan. I live in Massachusetts, so that was kind of cool. And I pick up the phone, and he says, can I talk to Bob Salvatore? And I'm speaking, and he says, oh, I can't believe I'm talking to you, my favorite author. This is Curt Schilling. And I'm like, screw you. And my wife is over there laughing, because apparently his publicist had called earlier to confirm that was my number. He's like, and she's like, and so I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to you. He says, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to you. So for 20 minutes, we just went back and forth. And he told me that, he's getting near the end of his career at that time. This was 2006. He only had a couple of years left, and he knew it. And he wanted to start a video game company because he's the biggest nerd on the planet, and he is. And so he asked me to come in and create the world for his video game company, the IP for his video game company, which was called Green Monster Games, but is now 38 Studios. I don't have a Wizard shirt. That's why I'm wearing that. They're going to get me one, though.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I like free stuff. So for 4 years, we've been building an MMO. And it's going to be huge. And it's going to be beautiful. And it's going to be, I think, cutting edge. We've got an amazing team. But what happened was, last year we got the opportunity to buy a company called Big Huge Games. They did Rise of Nations, some other Catan. They were in development of an RPG engine that's really amazing, and a game that they were trying to put together. And they had just signed up Ken Ralston and Mark Nelson, who were the guys who did Morrowind and Oblivion, the lead designers. So when we got the opportunity to buy BHG, we said, hell yeah, and we bought BHG. And we introduced them to our IP that was now 3 years in the making. And they loved it. And we told Ken and Mark, find a place, find a time in the world, and write us a story for this open world RPG that we're doing. And they did. And the result, you're going to see in a minute here, is a game that's coming out next fall, a single-player RPG. It'll be on PS3, Xbox, and PC. And it's called The Reckoning. Also, I went back to Corona, my Demon Wars world, a few years ago, to do I wrote a book called The Highwayman, which I really love. And then I signed a 3-book deal with Tor Books to finish that series. And so the 4th and final book in that series, The Bear, will be out August 18th. And if you haven't read The Highwayman, what I did when I wrote Demon Wars is I did this huge 7-book series, and I hope you'll read it. I think it's some of my best work. I really do. And I'm very proud of that. But then after I got done creating the world and the gemstone magic and the social structures with the 7-book series, I went back and wrote Drizzt-like books, if you will, kind of personal stories. And that's the Highwayman Saga. Saga of the First King, it's called. There's 4 books, The Highwayman, The Ancient, The Dame, and now The Bear, which is coming out August 18th. And that'll be the end of that. I will be going back to that world again. New characters, new time. It's my Forgotten Realms, if you will. The third thing, in November of this year, will be the third book in the Stone of Tomorrow series that I wrote with my son. And that was a blast. And the Stone of Tomorrow books take place, the first one takes place, it coincides with the Halfling's Gem. So I got to write some of my favorite scenes from the Halfling's Gem from a different point of view. Well, think dwarves, flaming chariots, things like that. Okay? And I got to write them from the view of people going, what the hell is that? It's very cool. It was very cool. And Gino and I had a blast doing that. And I can announce, I believe, because it was announced to San Diego, right? Okay, Gino and I are teaming up again to do a new story arc of Drizzt comics with IDW. That'll be out in 2011. And I think 2011, we haven't seen our deadlines yet, but we've already started them. And those books, those comic books will take place post Ghost King. So, they're new. We're not just taking the Ghost King and turning it into comics. We've got new Drizzt stories for the first time outside of the novels. There'll be new Drizzt stories. And that'll be next year. So, and then the big news of all of them for me is a few months ago, Wizards and I came to a new agreement for 6 more books. So counting the book coming out this October, Gauntlgrim, which will be out early October, picks up after the Ghost King. There'll be at least 7 more Dark Elf books, and I'm very happy about that. And that, it's funny because I always hear about authors who kind of get trapped by their success, you know? And they feel like, well, I want to do something else. And I have wanted to do something else, but because of Drizzt, I've been able to go do Crimson Shadow. And I've been able to do Demon Wars, which I still, I will still do Demon Wars. And I was able to do Spear Wielder's Tales and all the rest of it because of the success of Drizzt. But I've never felt trapped by Drizzt. And I've always said from the beginning, and I mean it, when I'm not having fun writing him anymore, I'm not going to write him anymore. But I'm still having fun. So I'm going to keep writing. Until I'm not having fun. Or until he meets an untimely death in one of the books. Right, Susan? So I think, for me, it has been an amazing journey. And every time I come back to GenCon, I'm reminded of it. Because you see so many old friends. And it's hard to believe I've been doing this for 22 years. And it's just been the most amazing journey. More fun than I deserve. And I think back to when I sent my first book in. How many people in here are writers? Okay. Don't be afraid to ask just generic writing questions when we go to Q&A. We got a lot of time today. Had I sent my first manuscript in 3 months earlier or 3 months later, it's very likely I would never have been a published author. That's what this business is like. Let me explain. When I sent my manuscript for a book called Echoes of the Fourth Magic, which was subsequently published by Penguin and then again by Del Rey over the years, to TSR in January of 1987, they had decided they were going to do a Forgotten Realms book line. They had the first book from Doug Niles ready, and Doug was writing the second book, but it was going to be a year. And they decided they needed more books. So if I had sent my manuscript in 3 months earlier, they weren't looking for Forgotten Realms novels. Now, they didn't buy that manuscript, but they asked me would I be willing to do an audition for a Forgotten Realms novel from that manuscript. So 3 months earlier, they weren't looking for Forgotten Realms novels, and they had no room on their schedule for independent novels. I would have gotten a nice rejection letter. Hopefully a nice one. Some of them aren't. 3 months later, this was in January, in like March, April of that year, the sales numbers came in for Doug's book into the stores. And all the people at TSR realized this was going to be big. Because you have to understand, all the writers that were working there at the time, really good authors. I'm talking people like Jeff Grubb and Troy Denning, and Doug, of course, and Mary Kirchhoff. They had a ton of talented writers that they knew worked for the company and people they could count on to get a book in and done on time and a good book. But none of them were scrambling for Realms novels because they were all writing Dragonlance novels. Dragonlance was New York Times bestseller, right? That's where you're going to go. If you're writing that, you're not going to jump over to a different world. So 3 months earlier, they weren't looking for anyone. 3 months later, I would have been competing against people I couldn't have competed against from the outside at that time. And that was it for me. If I didn't sell it on that round after 4 years, I was done. So that's what the business is like. I just put it right in the middle and got in the right place at the right time. 22 years later, after having been retired for 20 years writing books, here I am. So for you guys who are writers, don't take it personally, and understand that for every person writing, there are 100 more who, for circumstances other than the writing, may never get published. That's just the nature of the business. Crimson Shadow was going to be Demon Wars, but I didn't have the time to flesh out the whole world at the time. And I'm very much thinking if I go back to Demon Wars, the next time I'll bring Luthien and Oliver over to the Demon Wars world and link the two. There's legal questions about who has the option on the next book, because we're 3 different publishers here. That's Hachette, that's doing Crimson Shadow. But I love Crimson Shadow and Oliver DeBarros. Who knows Oliver DeBarros? I think he's my favorite comedy character ever. The only thing I can tell you about Oliver is a cross between Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride and the little French guy on the wall in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And he's a highway halfling. You know, highwayman, well, he's a highway halfling. And Oliver is really cool. And the fun thing about writing Oliver is he doesn't just tell a joke. That's not how you write Oliver. When Oliver says something, you read it, and you go on, and about 3 pages later, you should groan and look back to see if he really said that. If you do that, I wrote Oliver correctly. And Oliver was the only character who actually started in a game. And because when I had the idea for Oliver, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull it off or not. So I played him in a game. And my little level 1 halfling rogue, who was also a little bit Sir Robin, if you watched Holy Grail, and not the bravest guy around. So I remember the adventure. We were playing in this campaign, and the guy who was running it at the time was one of these incredibly detail-oriented people. So we would go over for a Sunday night for the game, and we'd sit down to a meal with the Duke. And the entire night would be him describing the meal to us. So we're 12 weeks or so into the campaign, and we're still first level. We finally get on the road to adventure, and we're coming up on this Parthenon-like ruins with the columns in front, kind of this flat bed of ruins behind it. And we're, humping down the road, and the wizard has a scroll that he acquired in the town for clairvoyance. So he uses his scroll, and he looks the idiot from the pillar's back and sees that it's clear. And he says, "Oh, the coast is clear." So, of course, as soon as he says that, I'll lead. And Oliver goes dancing up the steps. And against one of those posts was this gigantic ogre with this gigantic maul. Now, in our game, we have our own house rules on criticals. If you roll a natural 20, you roll percentage dice. 0 to 85, you get double damage. 85 to 99, you get triple damage. 100's instant kill. So the ogre jumps out, boom, on my little halfling first level thief. 20, of course. 95 or something, triple damage. So consider this. I'm a first level thief. I have 6 hit points. The ogre's plus 6 to damage, and rolled triple damage. And then he rolled a 10 just to add insult to injury. So I took 48 points of damage. For those of you who don't game, what that means is that Oliver was splattered all over the stairs. And I knew at that moment that Oliver had worked, and he was going in the books, because everybody at the table stood up and cheered.
At this point, R.A. Salvatore showed off the trailer for Reckoning. We're going to skip ahead to questions about the game itself.
When I came in to do the project, what I thought first is, if you're going to have an IP that you're going to have artists and designers and writers and even mechanics designers coming in and working on, the important thing is to have a canvas so everybody's painting on the same canvas. So what we did was create a 10,000-year history of the world. And all the races make sense. And I can tell you this about the world. One of the things that's just happened in the world, and this is the Reckoning includes this, but the MMO more so is, and this is the way we're approaching this IP. It's not enough to just have things and say, well, it's magic. Because I believe whether you're writing a book or making a game, the less you ask the reader player to suspend disbelief, the more that makes sense to the reader or the player, the more immersed they will become in the world. Okay? So the way you do that is that not just that things have a reason, but things have a consequence. So, for example, in our game, what has happened in the world is the Well of Souls. It's been perfected. They've been working on it for centuries, millennia. They finally found a way to make it work. And the Well of Souls, if you play an MMO, what's the thing you take for granted? Resurrection. Right? An MMO without resurrection, nobody's going to play for long. Unless it's as easy as WoW, and then you don't die anyway. And I've been playing WoW for 5 years, but if you go and raid Icecrown, then you go out and play in the world, it's like you summon everything in the zone, and they all fall dead while you're talking on the phone. Anyway, it's not, so you don't just spawn in the graveyard. We have the Well of Souls, and there's a reason for it, and there's a story element for it. And it has a consequence. But it's not enough to just say, this is why someone. And this is what I keep telling the writers and the designers over and over again. What does it mean to the world to suddenly have resurrection? What does it mean to the priest, whose entire power base is because he's promising people an afterlife, if suddenly you don't need the afterlife anymore? What does it mean to the political structures of the world? What does it mean? You know, I mean, imagine tomorrow if they came out with a pill and said, you take this pill, you're immortal. And everyone would go, wow, that's cool, that's great, awesome, give me one. Would they, after they thought about it? What does it mean to the mother who lost her son or her daughter and was saying to herself, for all the years, when I die, I'll be with them again? That's what I'm making the writers think about when we're working on quests, when we're working on content for this world. Suspension of disbelief should be minimal. We want it to feel like a real world. And the other thing we're really working on is we want parts of this world to be beautiful, gorgeous, warm, home, something worth defending. And then other parts of the world to be worth fighting. And these are the philosophies that we've taken through this company, and they're hammered home every single day. I think it's going to work. I'm really excited about the new builds on the MMO. So, for what it's worth, Fall 2011, Reckoning, MMO to follow. Not announced yet. Reckoning is in the past. It's a couple thousand years in the past. But there are things that happen in Reckoning that will make more sense when you play the MMO. And things that happen in the MMO that will mean more if you've played. You can play either. We're not making them dependent on each other. But just if you do play both, you should have a richer experience and understand how they connect.
One quick question. Races.
Races.
I mean, so far, multiple races.
Yes. Yes, lots. New twists on old races, some standard expected archetypal character in races. Yeah, absolutely. Multiple races. More in the MMO than in the RPG, obviously, just because of the way the systems work. You know, I don't know how to design a game. Todd McFarlane doesn't know how to design a game. Kurt Schilling doesn't know how to design a game. So we have stolen. We have stolen the lead designer who came in and fixed EverQuest 2. And another legendary designer from Sony. Our UI whiz was the lead UI person for World of Warcraft. Our server guru was the server guru for Blizzard. Our CTO was the CTO for EA. We have stolen a level of talent that you would not believe. And we're looking for all the things that work in the situation that we're presenting in our game. And you have, this is what an MMO is. You can't say, well, this is what an MMO is now. This is what an MMO is, and we're going to go a little bit here.
So, really quickly, with the MMO, you say you've written 10,000 years of history.
Yes.
I assume this is going somewhere either at the beginning or the middle of that.
No, it's a couple thousand years from the present day where the MMO will be.
Alright, I'm just wondering, the big complaint I have with most MMOs.
For those who can't hear, this is a question about player consequence in relation to the story of the game.
We believe in consequence.
So you're going to have actual consequences for what characters do in the game.
I don't know how much I can talk about this, but I will tell you that if all the servers look the same 6 months into the game, we failed. And I'm going to leave it right at that.
And a question about the size of the world.
We're shooting for the size of the general MMOs. There is a lot of research about how long it should take to cross a zone, and when people are just saying, okay, I've had enough, and how fast you should be able to get from place to place. And there's a lot of tug of war on that too. I mean, everything in a game, when you're designing a game, is a tug of war. When I'm writing a book, I write the book, and then I have a little fight with an editor, but we're okay. When you're doing a game and you've got people with different ideas, like, if I was designing the game that I want, it would not be a commercial success in a post-WoW world. Because a game I want, you'd go corpse running. A game I want, you'd run across zones, and it wouldn't be easy. A game I want would involve encounters that were based on chaos, not mechanics. And what I mean by that is, you didn't kill them fast enough, here come a whole bunch of wandering monsters. But you can still win. But you can't win by following a prescription that you read on Thoughtbot or Alakazam or something. You will win by improvisation. One thing I loved about EverQuest was improvisation. I play the wizard. Slowed the group. Got aggro on a couple. They're chasing me. Route one. Running out. Route the other one. Meanwhile, my group is killing the rest. Because if they were all in there, the fighter would be toast, or the priest would heal him too much and he'd be toast, right? That's my game. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to be Copernicus, our MMO. Because when it comes to mechanics, I'm one voice in a company of over 100 people now. And I'm not the deciding voice by a mile. So please don't go and say, Salvatore says we're going to have death penalties and we're going to have corpse runs. No. I posted a big disclaimer, okay? And I don't want to see that. Because if not, I don't know what the end result's going to be. It's not my decision. I can guarantee you that the game I want would be a complete failure commercially. But I would love it. Because I'm a hard ass. I do not like... The only way I die in WoW is if I'm too high up when I jump off my mountain. Well, and to me, with Burning Crusade, what happened is all the dungeons became mechanics tests. Stand here, away from the spores, do this, and this, and it's cake. Until you do this, and this, you can't win. Right? I have a completely different style of gameplay. Mostly because I suck. And when I'm in a raid, and everybody in the raid knows what I'm supposed to do, and if I don't do it right, they all get mad at me, I feel bad. Yes.
What's it like writing the backstory and seeing it kind of take shape?
It's amazing. It's like watching Todd Lockwood do a cover for a Dritz book. It's the same feeling. When I go in there, and we hired also Aubrey Hodges, who did the Halo music, won awards for it. And he got Gene Rosenberg in, who's got a distinctive Eastern Europe flavor to his instruments that he prefers, so we could get this incredible scope. And then we brought Duncan Watt in, who's incredible with the orchestras. So our audio team is unbelievable up at 38. And when I go in the office, they don't say, come here, here's the music for this zone or this race. They say, we want you to listen to something. We go in there, we sit down. Gary will back me up on this. Aubrey gets the music going. After 5 seconds, I go, that's for, and I name the race. And they high five, because they nailed it again. And they go right through. These people are so bought into the game on every level. In telling a story in a computer game, you have X number of ways to do it, right? Nobody wants to read through 5 pages of text, right? You click to the end of the quest. What do I got to kill? Come on, I know you do. I know you do. VoiceOver is another tool, but VoiceOver can be hit or miss. You know? So you have that tool, you have those 2 tools. You also have cinematics, which we hope to employ. You also have something that Wrath of the Lich King did very well, which is zones changing because of your actions. And I remember my wife and I were playing in one of the zones, and we were standing next to each other and couldn't understand why we couldn't see each other. It's because I hadn't completed the quests yet. We were next to each other, but we weren't. And that's a storytelling tool. So you've got a lot of different storytelling tools that you can use, and then you just have to find out which one works in which situation. You don't want to rely too much on any one. You know, I don't want quests that go on for 1,000 words. That's 900 words too many. Okay? Because nobody wants to sit there and read quests. So we've got a whole bunch of tools in the toolbox, and we're developing new tools in the toolbox to tell the stories. And we know we're only going to tell 1/1,000,000th of the stories we could tell about this world, which leads to other products, we hope. Yes.
Back to your books.
Thank you.
Now,
Wizards paid for me to be here. Talk about books.
now that
Comment now that the spell plague has happened and Artemis has passed on.
Has he?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
obviously now,
Wow, is he going to be pissed when I'm done?
What's the consequences of him coming back?
Brown will pop back up in the new book.
I wouldn't count some of my favorite characters out just quite yet. But I don't know yet. Or maybe I do, but I'm not telling you. So there you go.
When it comes to writing
A question now about writing in the shared world of the Forgotten Realms.
how did that affect you as the writer, knowing that this is the world I was in, now they're changing the rules?
They had bomb threats at their building for 15 days. I'm totally kidding. A few years ago when I came out to GenCon was when they were talking about the 100-year leap. And I had the Bible on the plane. I was reading the Bible. And there's some things I thought were really cool. And there were other things I thought I didn't like. And there were some things I thought that were really cool, but I wouldn't do it this way. I'd do it this way instead to get to the same place. And then I came out, and me and Ed Greenwood and Thomas Reed and Stephen Shen and I think Rich Baker and Bill Slavichek were in the room, and we were going through this, and they let me have my say. And then I wrote this big long letter explaining my positions, and I sent it to Wizards of the Coast, and they let me have my say. And then they did what they wanted to do. Because, no, I'm not saying that in a bad way. This is their job. This is what they are doing for reasons that have to do with the game, for reasons that have to do with what they've decided is the direction they want to go. They let me have my say. I think a couple of things I said, they thought, he's right. A couple of other things I said, they said, we don't agree. And they went and they built the new sandbox. Okay? Now, I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I have lots of options. I can call Del Rey, Hatchet, Tor, Ace tomorrow and sign a book contract. Or I can just go work with 38 Studios full time. I have a lot of options. They show me their new sandbox. It's their world. If I decide that I want to play in their world, it is incumbent upon me as a professional writer to adhere to their sandbox. So I look at their sandbox and I look at what my characters, the ones that will come through, Dritz, okay, will be in their sandbox and what I can do with him in the new sandbox. And if I'm not excited about that, I don't sign a new contract. I just signed a new contract. That should tell you how I feel. Okay? Would I have done everything the same way? No. I don't think any two creative people do the same thing the same way. Are there a lot of good things that are going to come out of this in terms of being able to bring new people into the realms and revitalize the realms and update the realms? I think so. And I'm having a blast. I'm there because I want to be. So is Ed Greenwood. So, you know, take that as a stamp of approval from us. There's not going to be any chinks in the armor here. It's their sandbox, and I am privileged and thrilled to be 22 years and counting in that sandbox. Anyone who's ever worked with Hollywood will tell you that when you go to the theater and see it playing, believe they made a movie. Okay? I don't own the realms, obviously. It's a licensed property from a merchandising company, which complicates a lot of things. And this company also happens to have Transformers and G.I. Joe, which are, you know, printing money at the movies right now. I can tell you that I have agent for my other properties, and I have an A-list producer, an A-list star, and an A-list writer attached to one of my properties. That it looks good that we're going to get an option real soon on it. I can also tell you, this is the whole is Dritz a blessing and a curse question, right? Every major studio person, actor, writer we've talked to who has been interested, and then the next question out of his or her mouth has been, can we do Dark Elf? I've been thinking it's going to happen. I used to be like really hardcore on this, right? I used to be, you gotta make a Dritz movie. Come on, make a Dritz movie. I want a Dritz movie because I wanted that moment when I went to see a movie with my friends and I never told them anything. And we went in the theater and we sat down and the trailer came up for Dritz. Or any one of my books for that matter. And I would just stand up and go, ha. That's a moment I want in my life, okay? But it's been tempered, and I blame Guy Gavriel Kay. Y'all know Guy Gavriel Kay? The Fiona of our Tapestry. Helped Christopher Tolkien write The Silmarillion, okay? He's a brilliant writer, brilliant guy, Oxford guy. I mean, really, he's a cool Canadian is what he is. I met Guy at a convention at Harvard University a few years ago, right when the Peter Jackson movies had just come out. And he asked me, he said, what did you think of the Peter Jackson takes? Because he's friends with the Tolkien family, he worked with the Tolkien family, you know, Christopher picked him to help him do the Silmarillion. What did you think of, you know, Peter Jackson's adaptations? I said, well, I loved Fellowship of the Ring. Liked Two Towers, liked Return of the King, but I really loved Fellowship of the Ring. I said, I think he did an amazing job all the way through. Thumbs up from me on those. And he said, okay, and this is when I got hit in the gut. How do you feel about the fact that from this day forward, no one will ever again come to Tolkien's work through the books? Wham. Wham, right? Is anyone ever again going to read Tolkien's books and not see Liv Tyler when they see Arwen? And when they see Glorfindel come across the stream to rescue Frodo, they're going to be, who's this? Where's Arwen? Tom Bombadil? What's that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I can live with it if it doesn't happen after. Thank you, Guy. But it seems to me so obvious that this is the time. I mean, you've got comic book action movies grossing hundreds of millions of dollars. Now you've got something that's even less suspension of disbelief than the comic book that can have the same kind of movie, you know? So I think it's going to happen. But I don't have anything in stone, and I didn't get a check, so.
I was just wondering what the hardest part as a writer is about leaving some of your creations behind because of all this junk forward.
Oh, it sucks. But you know, when I wrote Demon Wars, I love it when people come up to me and they say, oh, nobody ever dies in your books. I say, have you read Demon Wars? No. Then shut up. What do you want from me? Have you seen the Wookiee lately? It always hurts. It always hurts when you kill a character. I remember the third Demon War book, The Demon Apostle. And I won't mention it because it'll be a spoiler to people in here, unfortunately. Someone very near and dear to me did make it out of the book. Hurts. Hurts a lot. Hurts more to write it than it does. Did you read The Ghost King? Who read The Ghost King? Traumatized. I was traumatized. Don't anyone say a word about that ending. It hurts. It always hurts. But they never found Chewie's body.
It can happen.
I got emails.
All right.
I dropped a moon on a Wookiee. I dropped a friggin' moon on it. I destroyed the whole planet under his feet while the Millennium Falcon's taking off away from him. And he's waving his fist and a moon fell on him. And within 3 days of that book coming out, my email filled up with, aha, they never found the body. No kidding!
Okay, given how the Ghost King ends, since we can't say, would you return to the Catterley family in the newer books?
I don't know. I doubt it. But I don't know. You never know. The funny thing is, and Susan's going to know this when she reads the outline I sent her, is I generally don't know what I'm doing in the book I'm writing. And that's the truth. I have a general idea of where I want a story to go, and then I have fun writing it. And all kinds of weird things happen that I never expected. And that's why writing the books is as fun for me as reading books are for most other people. It's just the way the thought process works with me. I have no idea. People die, and I go, holy crap.
I didn't see that.
Then they come back, and I go, oh, cool. I mean, was Wolfgar really dead in Legacy? It took me 4 years to figure that out. Yeah.
How much work do you do to keep up with what other people are doing in that sandbox of the Forgotten Realms? Are you reading all the other novels as well? And
I say, Susan, help. Are you kidding? I am freaking old. And I have always been the guy. It takes me a month to read a book. I am a horrible reader. It takes me a month to read a book. I'm talking a Charlie Brown book, okay? No, I am a horribly slow reader. I don't know why. It just is the truth. What I do is whenever I'm getting to something that I know might touch on someone else, I spend most of my time hiding from everybody else, and we set the parameters pretty clearly on what they want out of the book beforehand. Where I can go, what I can blow up, what I can't blow up, that type of thing. And then, of course, they change it when the book comes out. 1,000 Orcs. We want you to use Obuld Many Arrows from the campaign setting. And we go, oh, he's cool, I'll use him. But if I'm using him, he's going to die. He's a bad guy. And they say, oh, cool. Just rip his head off. Great. So I write 1,000 Orcs, I send it in. He's still alive, but the whole story arc is him going down in flames. And then they go, well, we made a mistake on the timeline. And the FRCS actually takes place after your books. So you can't kill Obuld. Thanks. But actually, I really like Obuld by the end of the series, so that worked out for the better, that one particular. So basically, I rely very heavily on the editors at Wizards of the Coast just to make sure I'm not crossing lines, because I can't keep up with it. I'm old. When I DM first freaking edition. Okay? When I play fourth. When I DM, it's first. I'm old. I may surprise you all, and the only one who comes through the leap is somebody else.
you got 6 more books. You have 6 more books.
No, I say Dritz books, but I consider the cleric books Dritz. Dritz to me is like Forgotten Realms books. Doesn't mean he's going to be in all of them. Servant of the Shard's a Dritz book.
I like Rebels.
Road of the Patriarch's a Dritz book. Spine of the World is a Dritz book.
Is that the Promise of the Witch King too?
So, maybe we'll have an entire series about Thibbledorf Point.
I was thinking Rumble
Or Athergate. Or Ivan and Pickle. Yeah.
And a question about going to the Midwest for more book signing tours.
I have
know it's the Midwest, I understand.
I have no say on where I go on book tours. And that generally comes about. Book tours are pleasing book chains and independent bookstores. That's what book tours are. So the people who yell the loudest get the book signings. It's that simple.
start yelling.
When people write to me and say, will you please come to Podunk? I say, you have a good bookstore in Podunk? Tell them to start yelling and we'll probably go to Podunk. Because the last thing tours are expensive.
Good.
Flying is expensive. Hotels are expensive. Media escorts are expensive. The last thing a publisher wants to do is spend a couple grand bringing somebody into a town and then go to a book signing with 3 people there and they all work at the store. And that happens. So the stores that they think are going to get a big draw, and then the book chains like Barnes & Noble will say, we have a budget for it here, we want them here.
Okay.
You know? And then you've got stores like Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego and Elliott Bay in Seattle and Powell's in Portland who are New York Times reporting stores.
Yeah.
You see? And now this year we've got 2 stops in Canada because Canada has been very good to me.
Yeah.
We do really well in Canada and they've been asking for stops and we go. And we went to Toronto last year and had a huge signing and it was a blast. So that's how those go. But go ahead.
But in Chicago, you had some father, I think it was the Road to the Patriarch tour, and you had some father, asking, hey, is this book cool for my kid? And you said, go get Servant of the Shard. This is really more of a mature themed book. How are you dealing with writing more?
I don't think I said Servant of the Shard.
Well, you recommended to him Servant of the Shard. He was going to buy Road to the.
I don't think I would recommend that book though.
Well,
that
you
was kind
recommended.
of. But anyway.
You recommended one of the other.
Sure,
more
I got you.
kid-friendly books.
Yeah.
And my question is, when you're writing on a more advanced, as you're writing on a more mature level, how do you tackle that? Because I know you wrote like one of your first not one of your first sex scenes, but one of the first Forgotten Realms sex scenes in Road to the Patriarch. So how do you advance like that as a writer?
A lot of what I do, honestly, is I just look at what's on TV. And if I'm under that bar, I figure I'm okay. And believe me, I'm way under that bar. I try to write my books. I've had people come up to me and say, your Dritz books, your audience has grown up. They have to grow up with the audience. I said, what do you mean? You want me to show boobies in the books? I don't consider that maturity, dude. But beyond that, I would rather get a letter from a 15-year-old kid who said, I'm having a hard time in high school. I'm in a bad place. I found your books, and these are my friends, and I love reading now because of your books. I would rather get that letter. I would rather get one of those letters than 25 letters from a 40-year-old guy saying, you've unraveled the mysteries of life for me. I really would. And I'm not saying I want people my age to be able to have fun reading the books. And I want you to be able to read them on several different levels. I think there's a lot of things in the Dritz books that are very analogous to the world and make statements about the world that at least make you ask yourself questions about the world. When I was younger, I thought my job as a writer was to give you the answers. I'm brilliant. Listen to me. And then I realized, I don't know shit, man. Okay? And I realized that what my job is as a writer is to get you to ask the questions and find your own damn answers. Okay? Dritz books do that. Okay? I don't need sex scenes in them, but sometimes I do. The one that was in there was really important for Artemis and Trary.
Oh yeah.
It was critical. If you read Demon Wars, Pony's Wedding Night is critical to that series.
You're right.
I still pull the curtain down. One time, a friend of mine asked me to put a quote on his book. And he's been a friend for a long time. And I said, sure, of course. And he sent me a couple of chapters of the book because I didn't have time to read the whole book because it was going to press. It was a last-minute thing. So I read, I read slowly, like I said. I read a couple of chapters and said, this is some of your best stuff. And I gave him a quote for the book. And then I kept reading because I really liked it. And I got to a chapter that was a 20-page description of oral sex, leaving nothing out of it. And I called him up and I said, take my freaking name off that book. Got in a huge fight with the publisher. I don't ever want a parent picking up one of my books, and I don't care what book it is, and giving it to their 10-year-old daughter or son to read, and having something in there that is wholly inappropriate for that child. And I know, as a parent myself, that there is no way you are going to be able to, if you have a voracious 10-year-old reader, you won't keep up with that kid. Because you can only read the Laura Ingalls Wilder books so many times. Or whatever. And, Twilight, just read the damn thing. I don't want to even go there. That's a trust that you build. And I think you can say pretty mature things without, drawing the shade. So that's how I do it. And I do it with all the books. Now, I would never recommend the original Demon Wars series to a younger reader first. But not because of the pony's wedding night or anything like that. I just think that the questions the characters in Demon Wars are asking themselves probably wouldn't resonate with a 10-year-old. Okay? In the Dritz books, I try and put some of those questions in there too. The questions of immediate danger, friendship, those types of questions, as opposed to the philosophy of how the world should be, which is more Demon Wars. You see? Just try and write them at several different levels and just hope people are enjoying them. That's all you can do.
A question now: if he had ever killed off a character and it was requested that he bring him back by the publisher.
If whether or not you were told, no, we want him to come back.
I can say at this point in time, and even back then, one of the beautiful things of working with TSR and Wizards, if I sent a book into Susan and Dritz is dead, she probably would give me some pushback on it. And some of the people at Hasbro would probably give me some pushback on it. But with all confidence, they've trusted me with my characters all the way through. I have never had them say, oh, don't kill that, except for Obold. But that was different, because that wasn't my character. You know, like I would never think, they won't let me put elements in the book and say, no, I'll kill him. No, but seriously, I would never think to kill someone else's character, for example, unless they told me, oh, kill him. They made me do that.
As you explained it, Comic-Con. I'm not trying to kill you.
He still gave slack.
Huh? What about him?
Question: if he will write any more about Jarlaxle and his history.
I was thinking, in fact, I was planning for Gauntlgrim, the 6th book of my contract, my last contract, the 5th book of my the last book. I'm old, I don't remember how many. The last book in the contract, the one that's coming out this year, is the last book of my last contract. I was planning for that book to be a Jarlaxle, Zaknafein story set way in the past, long before Dritz was a twinkle in Malice's eye, right? The realm's changed. Doesn't mean I won't do the book. It means this isn't the time for it. We have too many stories to tell to get the readers caught up with where the realms are. Okay? So it's not the right time for it. I may try and slip that in this 6-book series. Okay? It may happen. But right now, we had other things we had to accomplish in the books. But yeah, I've thought about it a lot. That would be fun. Going back to Menzel Berenzon, back when House Bay and Ray owned the place and everybody else killed everybody else. I like that. You know what Menzel Berenzon is based on, by the way? Mario Puzo's The Godfather. When they told me to create the Drow in the Forgotten Realms, I pulled out that awesome book, and it is an awesome book. And, you know, I'm an Italian kid from New England. It works for me. I had never watched The Sopranos, and then a few years ago, I watched a couple of episodes and I said, wow, this is pretty cool. This is like my neighborhood. I cannot tell you how many funerals I went to with a bunch of fat guys in dark suits standing around going, what are you going to do? They got the dialect. They got the affect down perfectly in that series. I've watched it like 5 times now. Every like February, I say, okay, Sopranos, pull it out. Start at 1 and go all the way through the Don't Stop Believing. You betcha. And that's, you know, so Puzo was a natural fit for me.
When you're writing your books, do you like take anything from present day, like a crisis or something? Or,
yeah.
You know,
Did you read The Pirate King? Power vacuum is a good thing. Yeah, of course. How can you not? How can you not? How can any writer not? Do you think I believe Tolkien for 1 minute when he says The Lord of the Rings wasn't based on World War I, World War II, and all of that? I don't believe him for a minute. He doesn't believe himself. Yeah, of course. Of course. You always look at what's going on around you. That's where you get your inspiration. I know more about any issue that's going on in this country right now. Any issue. If you want to argue with me about politics, he'll tell you. You better bring your wiki. Because I know everything that happened from primary sources. This is what I do. This is how I do my research. Because when you study things like that, what you're really studying is society and human nature. And that's what books are about.
Now, is there anything that you got halfway through the book and something happened and you thought, hold it here, I need to go back and change this or
Sure.
add on to it?
Sure. When I write a book, I'll start and I'll go to about 80% of the book. And when I get at 80% of the book, I will go back and my mornings will be rewriting and my afternoons will be pushing forward. And you push forward a lot slower than you rewrite. So as I get to about 80% of the book, I now have a list of things. And I may have gone into the chapters and said, add this here. Because things have happened during the story that if you don't go back and preface them, what you wind up with is the dreaded Deus Ex Machina, right? You know that concept? Deus Ex Machina. Okay, there's a dragon attacking the town. You're watching this movie. The dragon's wiping out everybody in the town. There's no way to beat it. And the hero falls down, moves a rock, and there's a sword. And he picks up the sword and stabs the dragon and kills it because that's what that sword's purpose was. But nobody knew it. That's called Deus Ex Machina. It's a lousy literary device. And what it basically means is, you know, the hand of God is how you survive. And you've all read books like that where all of a sudden somebody either becomes godlike or finds this super spell and then saves the world at the last minute. And it came out of nowhere and you go, wait a minute. So you go back and you rewrite while you're finishing the book to make sure you have none of that. Now, I did a twist on that because Jarl Axel is my walking Deus Ex Machina. The whole point of Jarl Axel is no matter what you put him in, he's got something in his Batman utility belt that will get him out of it. Jarl Axel is a walking Deus Ex. That's his purpose in the world. That's why I love the guy. And I remember when I was writing Servant of the Shard, some of you may have heard this one before, I was like so excited because Jarl Axel is going to, for the first time, to become a major character in the book. Like a main protagonist in the book. And I was excited, and then I went, I'm totally screwed. I have no idea what I've given him for equipment, what I've taken away from him for equipment, what other properties his equipment might have, and I'm looking at a pile of books this high that I have to read. Now, read slowly. Before I write this book, and I have 4 months to write the book, and I'm like, I'm dead. I can't use Jarl Axel. I went, wait a minute. So I went to a message board. Anonymously. I said, hey guys, let's do an inventory of Jarl Axel's cool items. A couple days later, I downloaded a 10-page thread. You guys are great. They had page numbers. They even speculated on what some of the things might be able to do we haven't seen yet. And Jarl Axel was ready to go. Deus Ex, baby. Yes.
Stork,
Stork.
the Highwayman. What's your inspiration for him? Because I love him. He's an awesome
The Highwayman
character,
is one of my favorite characters. He is an incredibly physically flawed human being and an emotionally scarred human being because of that. And it takes him several books to even realize he was emotionally scarred. Every town has, you see the people walking and they can't really walk right. They've got cerebral palsy. They've got whatever. And you wonder, what's the world look like through the eyes of someone like that? And so here we've got this young kid, Stork, who is fighting this horrible poison that was put in his system by an act of mercy by his mother, right? That's how Stork got hurt, in the womb. And through no fault of his own. And he's had this miserable life. And he is tormented constantly, except by 1 or 2 people. And what comes out of that is a person who has to go through this incredible journey in order to solve his own issues and come to the point where he thinks there is a greater good. There is community. There are sacrifices that are worth it, and not just for personal gain. I love the character.
That's why I love him.
I love the character, absolutely. And that's where he came from. And, you know, that was a journey for me to write that book. And I've had people come up to me. I had a guy come up to me and handed me the highway, and he burst into tears because his son has a debilitating disease that he's going to be battling his whole life. I'm going to read him this book, he said. And it was just, you know, It doesn't get better than that as an author to be able to reach out and touch people. And at the same time, it's painful to hear it, you know? But yeah, pretty cool character. Pretty cool character. That's why, you know, one of the frustrations is that I know the numbers a Dritz book will get, and I know the Demon Wars books won't get anywhere near those numbers. Not even close.
But I love stories.
And it makes me crazy because I think that, you know, and it's not just me. This happens for every author. You wonder why Robert Jordan kept writing Wheel of Time and everyone was saying, boy, you know, it's time to end this. If he ended it, he's done, and he knows it. You know? Terry Brooks writes a Shannon book and he sells. Then he writes a Magic Kingdom book and he sells.
Yep.
I write a Dritz book. I write a Demon Wars book. And it's sad that it's the truth, but it's the truth. But I really wish, that's why when someone comes up and says, you never kill anybody, it's like, wanna see me? Because I know they haven't read Demon Wars. You know, one guy, you should read George Martin. I have read George Martin. He's a great writer. Why wouldn't I read George Martin? Well, because, you know, you have to learn how to kill people. Have you read Demon Wars? No, shut up. I know how to kill people. I like it.
For Gauntlegrim, I can't even pronounce it.
Gauntlegrim.
Gauntlegrim, yes. Creating new companions, was that a challenge for you? Do you ever put a companion in and then change it?
What new companions?
No new companions? There'll be no.
I wouldn't tell you. One of the exciting things about the 100-year jump for me is putting Dritz in new situations. I will tell you in Gauntlegrim. Here's a don't spread this around the internet. The first Dritz essay in Gauntlegrim, unless Susan messes it up, is Dritz. Actually, it's the first Dritz essay in the next book. Okay, I can't talk about it. It's not in Gauntlegrim. Never mind. I like that, huh? One of the things I'm doing with Dritz is going to have to come to terms with some emotions that he's not expecting. You know, you can feel really sad and then feel guilty because in a way you feel a little free. A responsibility has been taken from you. And it's pretty conflicted. And kind of a license to rage, if you will. And you'll see. That's all you'll see. I can't say it anymore because I don't even remember what book I'm talking about. It just, yeah.
Two of your my favorite characters are Jar Axel and Artemis. What were your inspirations for those two characters?
Well, Artemis was a mirror image of Dritz. I mean, that was the whole point of Artemis, was so Dritz could look at him and say, that's who I would have become if I had stayed in Menzoberranzan. Because Artemis isn't really immoral, he's amoral. And he's amoral because he just thinks the world sucks so bad, who cares? He's just one of those people who has, and if you read the backstories on him that I've written, he got broken by trauma. And so he doesn't care. And had Dritz stayed in Menzoberranzan, I think he would have been like Zaknafein, and I think Zaknafein was a lot like Artemis. When you think about it, Zaknafein was slaughtering with impunity, right? Opening scene of Homeland. Thank you, Malice. They're all gonna die now. Loves it, right? Zaknafein relished killing matron mothers and priestesses. That's not a good act, even if they're drow, because he's a drow too. That's not a good act. He just didn't care. I think Artemis was kind of the same way. So he was put in there as kind of a mirror to Dritz's soul. Jar Axel was because I wanted to play with Deus Ex Machina. I wanted to have my cameo appearances by this guy who could just get himself out of anything. You know, I remember when I was writing Promise of the Witch King. There's a scene in Promise of the Witch King when Gareth Dragonsbane goes down to see Artemis. And Artemis says, you hate me because you are me. And you can't deal with that. And just because your pretty laws say it's okay for you to stomp people, you're still stomping people. So don't pretend that because you think you have the weight of the law on your side, you're doing anything better than I'm doing. And that really shakes Gareth Dragonsbane. And I thought it was the most important scene of the book. So the whole point of the book was that scene. And then when they did the audiobook and they sent me the script for the audiobook, they took that scene out. And I called up and I said, Phil, you're kidding, right? And he was like, I know. And we put the scene back in. So I needed Artemis so that Artemis was a vehicle for Dritz to realize the road he was walking as to the road he was destined to walk. Yeah. And then he just got cooler.
Question on the 100 Years Jump, if this will allow the difference in society's views on Dritz.
From 100 years past to 100 years.
I think we were going there anyway, because Dritz, if you look in the later books, I don't think he was like getting spat on when he walked in the gate anywhere. Because even the people that wanted to spit on him knew that if they did, he'd cut them to pieces. So, I think it's a logical change for him. So it actually makes it easy for me to not have to keep revisiting that thing that I've pretty much solved in the books. And the fact that, because one of the things is, one of my favorite scenes, I think, is Servant of the Shard, is when Jarlaxle impersonates Dritz.
Oh,
Says, I am Dritz the Warden. Who? And that's in there for a reason, because I think we lose sight of this. We live in a world where, when certain people who Twitter are going to the bathroom half a world away, right?
Well, yeah.
The idea that in a world like the Forgotten Realms, what happens in Kalamport would have any resonance in 10 towns is ridiculous. One of the things, until very recently in our world, people grew up, lived their entire lives, and died in the same town, having never visited another town. The reason why our government is structured the way it is, in terms of electing people, is because it took weeks for people to get back from their colony, back from their state to Washington to say who won. That's why you had electors, right? So I always try to keep that in mind when I'm writing the books. But I don't want to have to revisit Dritz's first entrance into Luskan every time I go into a new city. Been there, done that, several times. So now I don't have, that's just one less thing I have to stall and revisit something on for me. So I think it's a very logical and good change for me with Dritz, that he will be accepted. There are good drow, right? And I do take full responsibility for ruining the coolest monster ever put in D&D, the Dark Elves. I didn't mean to do it, but I did. Sorry. I get hate mail from DMs. All my players want to do is play a dual scimitar wielding ranger drow. You suck. Actually, at GenCon, true story, a few years ago, kid comes up and he looks at the books, he looks at me. You wrote those? Yeah. He goes, oh, a good drow ranger wielding two scimitars. How cliche. And I said, thank you. I don't think he got it, but anyway. Yeah.
Seeing your shirt actually did make me.
Question now back to Reckoning and the creation of languages for the game.
How many, did you guys actually do any language creation?
We have a guy at 38 Studios named Brian Labor. He came from Iron Lore. And he's one of these, he's a total geek. But he's actually a Renaissance man. I mean, he plays softball pretty well. He plays this pretty. He's an athlete. He's a animator by trade. He can design content, and he's got a thing for languages. And he actually came up with languages for every race in the game. I don't know how you're ever going to put it in the game, but we have fonts and they make sense. And
Okay, so it's not just simply one or two.
No, he can write, this is Gnomish. This is Gnomish for Copernicus. It really is. It's bizarre, okay? Yeah, it's very cool. I had a kid write me a letter in drow once. Remember the old drow in the Underdark? Yep. And Ed Green with it at the back did a glossary of words. That kid write me a letter in drow, so I answered them in Klingon. I can't hear you. Wait a minute.
I heard a story about a guy in Japan that got lost in Japan and got directions from a Japanese kid who spoke Klingon. They both talked to each other in Klingon.
Wow. And Jedi is a religion in England.
Yeah.
But I'm the strange one.
A question now about Guinevere. If there is any possibility of a Tales of Guinevere.
Possibility of tales of her future,
Her. Always was a her. When I wrote The Crystal Shard, it was a her. And they told me, no, you have to make the cat gender neutral. And so I did. And then a copy editor put in him in a couple of places. I swear that's the truth. Always, always Guinevere. Guinevere is the Celtic or Welsh spelling of Arthur's queen. Okay? It's a her. Writing, well, she's around. I mean, as a main character, that'd be tough. The language barrier, you know? But I can do it for Pickle. I can do it for her, I guess. It's like writing the Tarzan book. I wrote a Tarzan book. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, way back in the day, they were going to do this, you know, when Hercules and Xena were big shows on TV, they were going to do Tarzan. And so they hired me to write the book, and I agreed because I was going to get to work with the grandkids of Edgar Rice Burroughs, who I never met, never spoke to once. They lied to me. And so they sent me the screenplay, and I wrote this Tarzan book, and I was like, but how do you spell that yell? Ah! Yeah, it's really awful, don't buy it. Novelizations are painful exercises. So, she's around. I don't think she'll have her own book anytime soon, but actually I know someone just told me they're naming their daughter Guinevere, which is kind of cool. Well, I always get scared when people write me letters, they name their son Dritz. And I write back and say, I hope you taught him to fight.
Yeah.
By the way, I created it and I can't pronounce it. Yeah.
So, let's go into the world of speculation for a moment. If you could take any area or characters in the realms and play with in your part of the sandbox, what would you do with it, and where would you go, and who would you take there?
I would torture Elminster to death.
Is there a part of the world that fascinates you that you'd like to explore?
Well, in the old realms, the place I really wanted to explore was Mithranor, which I thought was the coolest place ever. In the new realms, I'm waiting for all the fallout to happen. One place I wanted to explore was Luskan, which I did. Okay. Another place I really wanted to take to the new realms was Spirit Soaring, which I did. But it seems like everything I'm touching is turning to crap. I'm burning places down. I'm blowing places up. I'm killing people in the process. It's kind of fun. It's freeing. I don't know. I would like someday to go back to Menzel Bernzon, because I think Menzel Bernzon has not been touched very deeply in terms of the overall place, and I think there's a lot of cool books there. And I like it when I go back to 10 Tons. Feels like I'm going home. Because I made that place up. So.
What about the other Drow city besides Menzelbaron's?
Chedniside.
Is there much of a, I mean...
I don't know what they're doing with that. I know they toasted it pretty good and wore the spray.
Well, yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you can say that.
Yeah, they toasted. They wanted Menzo, I wouldn't give it to them, so we killed Chedniside instead.
Thank you.
Good call. Now, were
Then
those,
Rich Baker took a good shot at Menzo, and I had to pull him back a little bit. Like, knock it off, Rich.
now, were those the only two major, like I said,
They're the only two I've seen detailed.
Okay.
There may be others. There are others mentioned.
Yeah, there's one under Skullport.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was one.
There's one thing.
Yep. Yep.
And there's one by Collinport.
See? You're asking the wrong person. That's a question. Yeah.
A question now about how hard or how easy it is for RA to now write the Dritz fight scenes.
I just watched the dances on America's Got Talent. It's hard. It's actually harder now because you can only describe whirling scimitars. So I'm out of adjectives, man. And you got to keep coming up with new twists in the terrain around them, or new monsters to fight and stuff. And it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do, which is something that new characters might, with new fighting styles, might inject into the books. Yes.
More of a comment than a question now, just expressing admiration for the character of Cain.
Yeah, Promise of the Witch King.
Promise of the Witch King. That was one of the coolest. I really liked that character a lot.
Not my character.
Really.
Yeah. I wrote a book for TSR many years ago called The Bloodstone Lands Resource. My wife actually wrote it with me. Where we took the modules that Doug Niles had done on Bloodstone. He did this great series of modules. And Gareth Dragonsbane, Cain, all of them. Except for Montolio. No, not Montolio. Mariabron was mine. That I added in the book. I added some in the book. But most of the characters, the named characters that you met in that book, were Doug's characters. And they were awesome. Every one of them. And I don't even think they were all Doug's. I think they were Doug and the players at his table when they were doing the modules. They created the characters. And they were awesome. And so, not mine. But I love the Cleric Quintet was supposed to be the Monk Quintet. But second edition came out. And so they said, there are no monks. They got rid of the monks and the assassins, right? And we don't want to feature a monk in a story. This was before they had the fighting clerics come back, right? We don't want to feature a monk in a story, and we got rid of the monks. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Because I was thinking of going to the Monastery of the Yellow Rose, right? From those modules. That's from the modules. And I said, we really want you to write a series about a cleric. He said, cleric? Right, this first, second edition. The cleric is the last guy who comes to the table and says, hey, can I play? What do you guys need? You're the cleric. Shut up, sit down, and heal me. You want me to make him a main character in the book? But it worked. And that was supposed to be set in the Bloodstone Lands. But then they made me get out of there, too, because Doug really was taking ownership of that place, and they wanted him to write books there.
So how'd you throw Danica in there then? Get the bumps fruit on it.
I cheat. I told you, 70% of my job is to work around the game designers and the editors. And so well, can I have a cleric can I have a monk? I mean, they're still monks, right? Can I have one as a minor character? Yeah, no problem. Okay. I told you. I cheat. It's fun. You know why Pickle is named Pickle?
Yes. Well,
Do you all know why Pickle is named Pickle? Okay. When I wrote The Halfling's Gem, I was planning the fourth book to be the retaking of Mithril Hall. Right? Remember the Halfling's Gem? They go down to Callanport, and then they come back, and they're going to retake Mithril, because they were at Mithril Hall. It's run by the Grey Dwarves have it. And then they had to chase Entreri and Regis across the world to rescue Regis. And then they're going to come back and retake Mithril Hall. So the fourth book was going to be the retaking of Mithril Hall. But TSR, my editor, said, you know, people are done with these characters. This is 1990.
Where are they now?
People are done with these characters, so wrap it up in the epilogue. Retake Mithril Hall in the epilogue. So we have a nice ending, and we'll go on to something else. We'll find something new to do. Okay. So I wrapped it up in the epilogue. But I needed, because of the timing of everything, without getting into this long, drawn-out thing, I needed a dwarf general to lead the charge to retake Mithril Hall. So I came up with what I still think is the best dwarf name ever. Thorin Oakenshield, step aside. Dag Nabbit.
Yeah.
So what happened, subsequent to that, this is right before I drove Eric into the church. Eric was catching a ton of heat from some really serious game designers who thought we were mocking dwarves, and they didn't like it. That's a silly name, and Eric was catching all kinds of heat for that. So Eric told me, because now this is a couple of years later, the book's been out and the feedback's been in, and Eric was really mad at me because he didn't even notice the name. He was, going through last-minute things, and he was really mad at me, and he said, if we ever come back to this character, you're going to name him Dagna. We're getting rid of the Dag Nabbit. Okay, I'm not gonna argue. So now I'm writing the cleric quintet. And I got an idea for a couple of dwarves. Boulder Shoulder I know I'll get away with. Ivan's a good dwarf name. But I needed his brother. And so I Pikel. I mailed the manuscript in and I waited by the phone. Then the phone rings. Bob, it's Eric. Hey, you got the book? Pickle? I said, cucumber. I said, no, pickle. I said, are we talking the book or are we talking garden salad, Eric? He said, no, you have a dwarf named Pickle. I said, I don't have a dwarf named Pickle. Ivan's brother? He said, no, it's Pikal, like the weapon. It's pronounced like the weapon. He just spelled it wrong because he can't spell. It's Pikal. All right, never mind. All right. He's got green hair. He braids it over his ear, so his head, he's a pickle. So after I drove Eric into the church, you will notice Dagnabbit is the son of Dagna. I win! The other good one when we had to change from second to third is from first to second edition is Artemis and Trary. I'm working on Homeland, because they said we want to go back. I get a call from Jeff Grubb. He's the coordinator of the realms, poor bastard. He's the coordinator he's herding cats for a living. And Jeff calls me up and he says, Bob, how are you going to kill Intrary? I just wrote the Halfling's Gem. Now I'm working on Homeland. Intrary's not even born yet, right? I'm not killing Intrary. What are you, crazy? I'm just beginning to like the guy. Oh, no, you have to kill Intrary. But we like him, so we're going to let you do it. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He says, there are no assassins in second edition, and all the assassins are getting their souls sucked up by an evil god. But we don't think Intrary should die like that, so we're going to let you kill him. I said, Eric, I'm writing a book that takes place 80 years before he's born. We'll write a short story, so we're going to let you kill. I said, I'm not killing Intrary. You have to kill Intrary, or we're going to kill Intrary. Not Eric, Jeff. I'm like, Jeff, I'm not killing Intrary. But back and forth, I don't understand why we have to kill Intrary. He goes, because there are no assassins in D&D anymore. He's not an assassin. He's a fighter thief who takes money to kill people. And Jeff says, we can do that. I win. I told you my job. You people weren't believing me. Yes. I'm going to tell you a story when I was DMing. Early on in my writing career, I had a few books out. I had new people come to the table with me. Kid was my cousin, actually. He now works for 38 Studios, Mike Ledger. And his friends joined my D&D group. So on one of their first adventures, they come into this barn, and there's a drow in the barn. They chase him up the loft, and I'm describing him. He's got two scimitars, he's got purple eyes. And back in the day, that was supposed to be unique, right? And the eyes, right? That was unique. That was like the difference. That was just like this kind of symbolic difference in dress. So a couple of them were really into the books, and a couple of the others weren't. And they're trying to, we got to burn them out, burn down the loft, we got to kill this drow. And someone goes, wait a minute. He climbs up the ladder, he says, the drow's up there, ready to go, and he says, Dritzt? The drow says, what? He says, you're Dritzt. He says, you've heard of me. Shh. Now they think it's a plot point. He goes downstairs, walks in the middle of them, and cuts them all down dead. And as he's leaving the barn, he says, what the hell is a Dritzt? So, don't believe your eyes. What makes a villain tick? My favorite villains are the villains who don't believe they're doing the wrong thing. Or believe if they are doing the wrong thing, it's because everything sucks anyway. So you have Artemis Intrary, who thinks he never killed anyone who didn't deserve it. That's what he believes. You have Marcello Dionero from Demon Wars, who's probably the best villain I've ever written, who really believes that he's right. He really believes that he's right. And don't tell me that can't happen. Because I watched what I consider one of the most moral countries in the world justify torture. Don't freaking go there with me. Dinero did the same thing. Right?
Right.
So that's what makes a villain to me. Because somebody wakes up every day and says, I think I'll do evil today. It's boring. Okay? They're boring. You know, I mean, one of the beauties of fantasy is you have the embodiment of evil, right? You have an orc, and he's evil. And you kill him. You disembody him with your sword. You have a demon. You don't parley with demons, you kill them. So I think I'll write Obuld a little differently. Goes through a ceremony, he gets his wisdom increased, he gets all his stats, if you will, increased. He gets heightened, he gets empowered in this great ceremony by all the clerics. And they start saying, this is a better way than the way we've been doing it. And so now Dritz and Bruno are sitting there, and Bruno wants to fight the orcs. They can't win. If they go to war with the orcs, and the dwarves start the war, Silverymoon's not going to back them up. Sundarbar's not going to back them up. Nesmi's certainly not going to back them up. Maybe Adbar a little bit. But they're just not going to throw their men on the field when there's a truce being offered. And so Bruno wants to kill these orcs, but he can't. Because Mithril Hall doesn't stand a chance against the Kingdom of Many Arrows. They might just be able to sit in their home and stay tight, but they won't even be able to get out unless they go under the river, right? And then you have Dritz, he's already vowed to kill this guy because this guy cut his friend in half, and because of this guy, an elf that he had come to care deeply about is gone. And Dritz is the one that has to say, what's best? And it's something that you will see if you read the beginning of later on, which book am I thinking of? The first book of Transitions, the Orc King. If you read did the 100-year jump, you will see that 100 years later, Dritz still isn't sure if they did the right thing or not. Right? That's what makes a good villain. A good villain is someone who has motivations that make sense to him or her. And don't just wake up every morning and say, I think I'll do evil.
How do you come
Creating character names.
Character names.
I close my eyes, I hit the keys, and I hope enough vowels pop up.
Because they tend to be really, I like your characters.
They're really hard.
Do you go back and
I usually name my characters Bob and Brian and Diane. And then at the end, when they finally tell me their names, I do a universal search and replace.
I can never figure out how to pronounce half of them.
I still don't know how to pronounce it. I don't care.
Bob's one single favorite book?
Mortalis. Book 4 of Demon Wars. Hands down, best book I've ever written, best book I'll ever write. My favorite Dritz book is still Homeland, although the Ghost King hit me in the gut in a really profound way. But Mortalis was a book I wrote. When I wrote Demon Wars, I figured there was going to be 2 trilogies. The story of the hero, and then the bigger story of the consequences of the actions of the hero. So, just kind of the progeny, if you will, of the hero, figuratively and literally. But then when I got to finished the 3rd book, and I started writing the 4th book, I realized I needed a bridge book. And at that time, my brother was withering away with cancer. And that book was my catharsis. And it was a way to express all my hopes and dreams and fears of life and death in a book. And when I finished the book, I sent it to my editor in New York, Veronica, and I said, this is either really good or really self-indulgent, and I don't know which. And she called me up a week later, and she said, we're not changing a word of this book. I still haven't read it. And the story gets even better, because that was the first book Keith Parkinson did a cover for me. I adore Keith Parkinson. I thought he was the most talented artist on the planet, or one of, certainly, right up there with anyone. And I've been wanting to work with Keith for a long time. And he did the cover of Mortalis. And on the cover of Mortalis is a character who completely took me by surprise, a guy named Brother Francis. And he's nearing his death. And if you look at that hollowed out picture of Brother Francis, it reminded me of the last weeks of my brother's life. So my wife bought me the painting for my birthday. And I couldn't hang it in my office for a while. I had to hang it somewhere else. I couldn't really look at it. And then, a couple of years later, Keith passed away from leukemia at the ripe old age of 45. Same age as my brother when he died. And so I couldn't look at that but now I look at it and I remember all the good things. And that book, I really think it's my favorite book. That's my favorite book. Very important book for me. And I didn't mean to bum you all out. My favorite chapter that I've ever written, though, is chapter 11 of In Sylvan Shadows, when Ivan and Pickle are trying to put a rock up a tree. I was laughing like an idiot when I was writing that. I can't even imagine what people would think if I had like a webcam in my office. It's just bizarre. Who's got a question?
And a question on authors that he is currently reading now.
I read really slowly and it interferes. Authors I enjoy quite a bit. Many of my fellow Realms authors, Paul, Elaine Cunningham, Ed Greenwood, Terry Brooks has been a favorite of mine for a long, long time. He's a dear friend of mine too. Walter Miller's Canticle for Leibowitz is probably my second favorite book behind The Hobbit. I think it's just absolutely brilliant. And then, with me, it's like, it's hard to say I like authors, because we're all a bunch of ass. No, I mean, because to me, authors will sometimes write a book that just is their magnum opus, okay? Like Ursula Le Guin. Some of her books I adore, other books I can't read. Marion Zimmer Bradley, Mists of Avalon, is about as perfect an Arthurian book as you'll ever read. I can't read some of her other books. Nick O'Donoghue, who was never actually got out of the mid-list. He was working with TSR 20 years ago, wrote a book called Under the Healing Sign. And I read it and I'm thinking, oh my God, I should quit. This is like one of the most wonderful books I've ever read. I felt enchanted reading this book. It's about vets that go to this other world and they have to treat like unicorns and stuff. And he's a vet. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. And then I talked to him and he had sold like 14,000 copies total. And it was just, there's no justice. I read a book a few years ago. They wanted me to quote this guy's first book, and the book was called The Waterborne by Gregory Keyes. And so I read The Waterborne and I thought, it had all the mistakes everybody's first book has, including mine. Every first book will have these mistakes, But boy, he's got something about his voice, and someday this punk is going to write a book and I'm going to hate him. A few years later, he wrote a book called The Briar King. Holy cow. What a book. Amazing book. Another writer who knocks me off my feet, but I would never let my grandson read him, is Matt Stover. Matt is, a lot of authors say they're gritty. Matt is just downright nasty. He wrote the third Star Wars novelization, the last one. He wrote the last one. Terry Brooks wrote the first one, Phantom Menace. I wrote Attack of the Clones. Matt wrote the last one. And that is by far the best novelization I've ever read in my life. Brilliant writer. So there are lots. And it depends when you're in the mood. Like I remember when someone gave me, said, you got to read China Medieval. So I took a Perdido Street Station with me to Aruba. Big mistake. You can't read Perdido Street Station on a beach in Aruba. It's 95 degrees, the water's 90 degrees, the sun is shining, the birds are singing, the rum is flowing. And you're reading Perdido Street Station. So no, put it away, read it on a lousy winter night when the roof's leaking. So to me it's like, a lot of times when I hear people criticize books, what I'll say to them is, you weren't in the right place to read that book emotionally. The only person who can determine the relationship between the reader and the book is the reader of the book. I remember when I was reading Dragonlance for the first time. I got my first rejection letter when I was reading the first Dragonlance book. And I threw it across the room. And I said, I can read better than this. I hated it. A few years later, I got published. I went to GenCon. And they sat me behind Margaret and Tracy, and they said, you want to see how authors talk to their fans? Watch these two. These two are awesome. These two they're just right there. They love this stuff. And I watched one after another, people coming up and falling down over Kitiara or Tanis, right? Just in love with these characters. And I'm like, huh? And I went back and reread it, and I went, how did I miss this? This stuff is awesome. I wasn't in the right place when I read it. Don't tell Margaret Tracy I said that. No, you can tell him I hate it. Don't tell him I liked it. Tracy's, no. He killed me after I left Killer Breakfast today. But, you know, and I went back and reread Dragonlance, and I understood why all these people were falling down over the character. The characters were brilliant. So, you know, I'm not reading much, I admit, these days. It interferes too much. I have a grandson now. I'm having fun. Yeah.
Now, after the fourth book in the series.
Yep.
Is that, I mean, are you going to do any more in this series?
Nope, that's it. The series ends with the bear on August 18th.
Okay, so it's not, so more or less.
If I go back to Demon Wars, it will probably be with Luthien and Oliver.
So.
If I can unwrap the legalities of it.
So these characters, they'll either, are you killing them off or just, they just going to be in a
You think I'm going to answer that 2 weeks before the book comes out, really?
You can't blame me for trying.
I get a call from Tor Books. Bob, it's Tom Doherty. Thanks. It's like a couple of years ago, Publishers Weekly put up a review of the book. Publishers Weekly, they're supposed to know better. They gave away the whole damn book. And I was like, and it's posted on Barnes & Noble and Amazon before the book comes out. It was like when I wrote Passage to Dawn. I gave people the manuscript of Passage to Dawn, and they, for most of the book, didn't know if it was going to be Zaknafein or Wulfgar that came back in that book. And then the book comes out, they put a freaking picture of Wulfgar on the cover. Thanks. And most of them were a hologram, remember?
Yeah.
So you go, wow, that's cool, look, it's Wulfgar. And then you're reading the book, go, gee, I wonder if it's Zaknafein or Wulfgar. Thanks. Yes.
Now a question regarding ebooks and how ebooks will affect the book industry.
And the problems that Barnes and Noble has been having financially. How will ebooks affect you and other authors?
Nobody knows what's going to happen. I'm not afraid of it. I'm embracing it, and I'm getting on the front end of it. I was talking to one publisher that was proposing a pretty radical idea that I wasn't ready for in terms of payment. And they said, well, you know, if ebooks become 95% of our business, then you're going to wish that we had this deal in place. And I said, if ebooks become 95% of your business, why do I need you?
That's true.
And so you have a business model that is changing dramatically, and you have a whole bunch of publishers and authors scrambling, trying to figure out how are we going to do this. Like, for example, one thing I keep pushing Wizards for. Tell me if this is a great idea. Take the Dritz essays and do them in 25-cent or 50-cent downloads on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Or the short stories, not the novels. Novels, people aren't going to read a novel on their iPhone. You can have them on the iPhone, but the novels are going to go to the iPad or the Kindle or the Nook, right? So, I mean, it is becoming a reality, and we're all, I think, just trying to figure out how's this going to work. Because you have to understand something. Authors get paid a percentage of the MSRP, right? So if I rent a hardcover and it's $30, right? Not me, but any of the authors. It's $30. We're probably making like $4.5 on a book, right? If the ebooks come out and that goes down to $8 because everyone demands that the books are cheaper, how are you going to pay the author? And the only way the author is going to be able to make what they were making per unit is to cut out the publisher. And that's not going to be good for anybody. Because if you cut out the publishers and the publishers hurt, what's going to happen? You're going to have certain authors that you keep going to, and then good luck finding new authors, because there's going to be 9 million of them with nobody doing the pre-reading for you and trying to help steer you. Now, publishers, one of the publishers' jobs is to take this gigantic hopper, right, of manuscripts and whittle it down to what they think the reading public will want, either because of mechanics or cliches or problems with the books. If you take that hopper off the business, good luck finding what you want. It's not like music, right? You can find a song you like in 30 seconds. You can't find a book that you like. Sometimes it takes several chapters before you really get into the flow of what's going on in the book. So it's scary for a lot of people. I mean, I'm not scared by it because I'm an established author. But the people trying to break out today, for you people who are writers, you know, you get a book out there. Do you self-publish? You never self-publish. That's what I was told when I was coming up. Really? Chris Paolini self-published. And then it was picked up by Knopf. He's doing all right. It's all changing. I'm not afraid of change because I think it'll sort out correctly. Authors understand the value of editors. Every author needs a good editor. Authors understand the value of publishers. The question is going to be, you know, you get Google alerts on your name when you're involved in the marketing, like I'm in with 38 Studios now. One of the things we're supposed to do is do the Google alerts on your name, just to see if people, what the buzz is on the trailer or whatever for the game. So I'm doing Google alerts on my name. Half the Google alerts I get on my name are, buy this book here. And it's pirated. The R.A. Salvatore audio collection. Really? And then I got a letter from a kid saying, man, I bought this book on audio, but they did a crappy job. I could like hear cars in the background. Somebody got their little MP3 in the book and read the book, and then sold it for $100 online. And when you talk to these people who are doing that to you, when you confront them with an email, you know what the answer is? Artists should want to share their work. This is why I'm killing people. Yes, we do, but there's an entire structure here that if it's not there, the whole thing goes away. Now in music, the microtransactions worked. Because you could buy a song for 99 cents, right? Yeah. And so what happened? People started spending 10 times the money on music than they were spending when they had to go buy a CD.
Because you could get the one song you wanted, right?
Everybody won, right? And all the one-hit wonders, they were all of a sudden doing great again, right? Can't do that with books. How many books are you going to buy in your lifetime? Many people say lots. People who read like I do, will I read 20 more books in my lifetime? Probably not. I'm not going to put 500 books on my Kindle. I'm not going to get to that. Well, you read fast. I don't. So it's scary, but you know, it's happening. There's nothing you're going to do. You can't change it back. I don't know that I would want to. I mean, I was sad when Barnes & Noble and Borders drove the independent booksellers out of business. I was ripping mad when Walmart was selling the Harry Potter book at such a discounted rate. They were taking a loss on every book, and the book chains actually lost money on Harry Potter. Walmart doesn't care if you pay $9 for a $27 book and they're taking a hit on it, because you go into Walmart, you can leave with $300 worth of junk anyway. Right? You go to the bookstore to buy the Harry Potter book, what do you leave with? The Harry Potter book that they just had to put an extra shift on for the midnight sale when it came out, right? It's short-sighted sometimes. I'm taking the long view. E-books are going to work. We just have to figure out how to make them work for everybody involved, particularly the reader. Because you don't give the readers what they want, it's not going to really matter what cut the publisher gets and what cut the author gets, right? So.
Even right now, though, buying e-books is not much cheaper than going and buying it.
There's a lot of pressure.
And there's less paper.
There's a lot of pressure. And I mean, think about the bookstores, they have to charge tax, and the internet doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, even that. Yeah.
A question coming in regarding Ed Greenwood and other characters.
I'm sure you've explained in the past why it didn't all make sure that you want
Because he hates Ed.
No, I love Ed. That's why. Because I'm in awe of Ed. Ed created the Forgotten Realms when he was 8 years old. Are you kidding me? I found out last year I'm older than Ed. That's the other thing. He's younger than me. He still looks the same as when I met him in 1980. No, that's because in the realms, everybody always says, Ed and I we both get the letters. Who would win the fight between Dritz and Elminster? And I write back, who's writing it? Because if I'm writing it, I guarantee you. And when I was the guest of honor for the RPGA, when they used to do the RPGA breakfast at GenCon back in the early 90s, I went over to Roy Van Tilburg's Off-World Designs booth. He makes t-shirts. He paints t-shirts before your eyes. Brilliant. And I had him make a t-shirt for me. So I went up and I'm doing my speech at the RPGA breakfast. I held up a t-shirt, and on the front it's got Dritz from the cover, the Larry Elmore cover of the Crystal Shard, where he's kneeling in the snow. He's got his fingers up in this blood, and he says, "Methinks the old mage went too far." On the back of the shirt, you see Elminster, and he's like this. His hat is on the ground and it's crumbled, and you see this big shadow around him, and coming down is a disembodied Monty Python foot. Wearing an ankle bracelet that says AO. Ed still has that shirt. Ask him about it. So when I say I'm going to kill Elmas, that is nothing but good-natured, me and Ed fighting. Ed is my hero, and he lets me play in his world. I love the man to death. But not the way Ed has in mind.
Yeah, we said something about the kiss the other.
What first really entranced you with the character Driss when you first wrote him up? and after 25 years, do you still feel that same kind of fire you
Yes,
have for the character?
absolutely. If I wasn't loving him, I wouldn't be writing him. Dritz wasn't in 5 minutes? Okay. Dritz was not in the proposal for the Crystal Shard.
No?
And they sent me the stuff, they wanted me to write the second Forgotten Realms book. The only thing they had printed was Doug Niles' Dark Walker on Moonshade. In the original Dark Walker on Moonshade, all you had was a map of the Moonshade Isles. They're tiny. Doug's characters owned the place. So I figured I had to use one of Doug's characters, Dareth of Callanport, and Cantus the Moorhound, to introduce the hero of my book, Wolfgar. Sent in the outline, got the book. I had sent in the proposal, the audition, got the book. But then they said, no, we don't want you to set it here. We want you to put it in the realms. And I'm looking at the map, and I said, we want it in the water? And they said, no. Oh, we didn't send you the map. So they sent me Ed's original maps. Stack of 8.5 by 11s, not numbered. Some with just lines on them in a mountain. Finally, we sorted out Icewind Dale. This little typo at the top of the map when they printed the map. I said, because it was like, can I go here? No, you can't go there. That's Cormyr, when Ed's going to Cormyr. Well, how about here? Well, that's the Bloodstone Lands. We're leaving that for Doug. Well, how about here? No, that's so-and-so's writing a series here. How about here? And this went on for 2 weeks. In a world this big, trying to find, all I needed was, 100 square miles of land. I said, what about that little thing above the mountains? Anyone got that? That typo? He said, no. I said, that's Icewind Dale. Leave me alone. I made Icewind Dale. But then I got a call from Mary Kirchhoff, who was the editor, and she says, Bob, we got a problem. I have to sell your book to the marketing team so they can, with the sales force. But I don't want you using Dareth. I said, I'm not using Dareth. I never wanted to use him. He was just to introduce Wolfgar. I said, but the sample chapter you wrote was Wolfgar and Dareth. And I have to go sell it in to the marketing team. I said, all right, I'll call you back next week. I'll come up with a new sidekick. And she says, no, you don't understand. I have to go to a marketing meeting, and I need a sidekick for Wolfgar. I said, okay, well, we got lunch coming up. I was working. I was a financial analyst. So we got lunch coming up. I'll work over lunch for you, and I'll call you this afternoon. She says, you don't understand. I'm late for a marketing meeting. So I thought about it for a minute, and I said, a black elf. They used to call them black elves back then. Long pause. She says, a drow? I said, yeah, a drow ranger. That'll be cool. No one's ever done that. Long pause. She said, Bob, there's probably a reason. I said, no, it'll be cool. I'll do a drow ranger. No one's done that. We'll have a drow ranger. She says, all right, since this is a sidekick character, I'm going to let you get away with that. What's his name? And I went, Dritz the Warden of Demon the Shesbanon, the 9th House of Menzoberranzan. She said, what? I said, I don't know. She said, can you spell that? I said, not a chance. There it was. So I started writing the book. And I was writing a scene with Dritz running across the tundra, and the Yetis jump him, and Bruna comes out. And I knew on page 2, same Wolfgar's book, his book. And I spent the next 10 books beating the ever-loving snot out of Wolfgar. He took over. I knew as soon as I started writing him, this is his book. Here's why I game. Playing in the Mike Ledger campaign. You know you're in the Mike Ledger campaign because within the first 3 or 4 levels of a Mike Ledger campaign, somebody will find a Wand of Wonder with unlimited charges, and you will know it's a Wand of Wonder because on the side will be the trigger words, wubba wubba. I don't know why. You have to ask Mike. So we're playing in the Ravenloft campaign. Now, I don't know the people that wrote Ravenloft. I don't want to know the people that wrote Ravenloft. I can appreciate them from afar. They are seriously demented human beings. They wake up every morning and say, I think I'll do evil today. So I'm a Ravenloft campaign, and I'm playing a halfling psionicist named Oliver DeBarros. And yes, I was playing him like an annoying little... And we found a wand of wonder. And I won it. Now, if you know the old psionicist, you really ran out of power quick. But I had a wand of wonder. Well, the other group is a guy named Tommy Parker. 6'5" prison guard. Thinks he's the toughest guy on the planet. He's a cream puff. And Tommy had the unfortunate, can be the unluckiest guy in the world. I once ran a campaign where we were jousting. The whole thing, I had all these cards of people you would joust. And he was playing a paladin. After 4th level, his paladin, he got his war horse, and he bought his armor, and he's out there in his shining armor, and he drew his first card from the deck, and it was a peasant on a pig with a broomstick. I told you how we do criticals. First pass, 2100, dead paladin. That's fine. But I've got this one. So we're playing. And every time Mike Ledger has, his wand of wonder is very different. He has the chart from the DMG. He has the charts from the Encyclopedia. I can't remember they did the Encyclopedia or Magic Items that they did, the 4-volume set. He had all of those charts. And he made up all his own. But he had them all in front of him. So you would roll like a D10 to find out what table of charts you're on. So there's thousands of combinations. No matter what I did with that wand, Tommy got it. He raises his sword and I fire a lightning bolt. We're being chased by giants. I turn around the fire and Tommy's feet grow big and he falls down and gets stomped flat. We're on the edge of a cliff. And this dragon comes flying in at us. We're on the edge of a cliff. I go, wubba wubba, and a gust of wind comes up behind Tommy. Whoa, that's going to leave a mark. No matter what I did, we're fighting a white dragon. Right? He puts on all his cold resist gear and I hit him with a fireball. We're fighting a red dragon. He puts on all his fire resist gear and I hit him with a cone of cold. It didn't matter what I did, Tommy got it. This went on for weeks. Ravenloft campaign. So what happens? In the world, some stupid thing happens. We get, our entire area that we're in gets torn out of the ground and put in like this gigantic rope trick, if you will. And we wind up in this like extra dimensional space on a field. 100 by 100 field. And there's air. And there's us. We said, you know, we're going to be farmers, I guess. But we had a wizard who could teleport. But we had one too many people, living people, for a teleport spell. But we had a bag of holding and the rod of resurrection. So you do the math. So we drew straws. I lost. So Tommy says, so Mike Ledger says, okay, Oliver's dead, and you're going to cast it. Oh, no. Tommy's... Oh, no. I psychokinesed myself. I was a psionicist. I just flew up from them. I kind of landed over to the side, and I took off all my gear. Then when anything get hurt in the fall, and I swooped up to the top. I'm hundreds of feet up, and I just stayed up there till my psionic power wore out. And I did the great Oliver Swan dive. And Mike goes, okay, Oliver's dead. And Tommy goes, oh, no. And Tommy walks over, and he picks up the wand, and he looks up at me, and he says, ha-ha, wubba wubba. And he rolls his dice. Caster and target change places. That's why I play games. Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your show.